right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. Let's start that discussion. We're calling it the Week in Review. A lot has been going on here, but my guests in studio, let me start by introducing them from my immediate left. Dennis Thumbi, governance policy expert. Asante for making time.
Thank you so much.
And Duncan Okach, advocate of the High Court, is joining us here this morning. Asante sana for making time as well. So let's take a look at the front page of the Standard. IEBC tests the tough questions. Electoral agency confronts hard and familiar questions from agents of leading candidates during a simulation of the presidential results transmission system at the Bomas of Kenya. Quite a number of questions are being raised there. What is the role of constituency tallying centers if presidential results from polling centers are transmitted directly to the National Tallying Center? Which are these 1,111 polling centers that do not have 3G coverage? When you see these questions being raised, Dennis, 60 days to the polls, do you have confidence that IEBC can carry out a credible poll despite these challenges they seem to be facing now?
Thank you, Trevor, and good morning, viewers. I think it's important for us to ask these questions and, you know, look at what happened in 2017 and learn from 2017 because IEBC also seems to be locked into a space by law.
Yeah. And
they went and asked JLAC to support some specific amendments based on verification and transmission of electoral results.
Yeah.
Given the fact that Chebukati sat before JLAC and said, you know what, in 2017 we had almost about 11,000 polling stations that are out of 3G coverage.
Yeah. And
what happens is that by law, transmission must be done electronically and verification electronically. So if there's no 3G coverage, the returning officer cannot step out of the polling station and go to a nearby center and use any other method whatsoever. So then what will we do if there's no network coverage at all? And that also provided for the basis of the contention in the 2017, presidential litigation or, petition thereabout. And so there are critical questions that lock IEBC into a legal conundrum.
Yeah.
That then we have to see how to resolve it. Because then 11,000 polling stations, I think in Kisumu, Murang'a, Kiambu, they form a critical question based on 2017.
Yeah.
The other thing that we need to ask ourselves is the integrity of the operating system, based especially on the KIEMs.
Yeah.
Because there was an issue that was presented, and I remember it was before High Court, and there was a direction that was given by the Public Procurement Administrative Review Board on September 20th that asked IEBC to prepare a fresh tendering system, because they had given the tender of the KIEM system and the software therein to another firm. Then they changed and went to Smartmatic.
Yeah. Now,
of course, the issues around Smartmatic, which is at the center of the U.S. presidential row between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, raises some integrity questions, but thereabout. I think one of the things that IEBC must move away from is in its opaqueness to communicate its difficulties that Parliament can resolve and other critical players can resolve. You don't have to ask for presidential candidates, whether they're from key coalitions or not, to come and ask you questions on the day that they're presenting papers to you. Yet these problems have been there perennially, year after year after year, and we don't seem to resolve them. The third question that we have to ask ourselves is the independence of this independent commission. And independence is in two ways. The first way is institutional.
Yeah.
Are you free from any manipulation whatsoever? Institutionally, given the fact that you're still dependent on other arms of government, would the statements that have been asked or said publicly by a certain segment of the cabinet secretary, do they injure on your independence or your integrity at all? And because when you see the CSICT that is supposed to provide for the ICT infrastructure of transmitting and verifying, making some blatant statements on air, then that questions on the integrity, on the institutional integrity of IEBC. And then there's the personal or private institution of the commissioners. You know, their indivisibility, their inability to to be corrupted thereabout. One of the things we don't want this time around is a contest from a presidential litigation perspective that will draw us back to the lessons that we should have learned from 2017. So I believe that the next 60 days, as politicians IBC must be building its capacity in areas that look like they have integrity loopholes or questions, whether by law or by substance thereabout. So those are things that we must keep on drumming, and we must keep on drumming, and IBC itself must be accountable to its citizenship. That opaqueness must be deleted from them.
Duncan, what are your thoughts, considering that they said that there is a bit of issues in terms of relaying the results? In fact, they're saying the law allows them 7 days, but what kind of impression does that create to the nation when you actually take the whole 7 days to give results? And in fact, some of these grounds that they're raising now was the reason why the 2017 election was nullified. Does this open the floodgates for a possible litigation that the same circumstances that were in 2017 that led to the nullification of the presidential results is the same ones that are still prevailing in 2022? Therefore, as a litigant, I'm going to quote saying this election was not fair and credible.
Trevor, I think this it's quite unfortunate that at this day and age, and just before we actually go to the voting 2 months or less, we are actually discussing issues IEBC and its preparedness, and the fact that that it seems that it will not comply with the law. Ideally, a society that does not learn from its own history is actually doomed, and this is where we are. We have seen even madmen, once they go through a path where they are bees, even those madmen will avoid that path. They will know very well. And this is where we find ourselves as a country. Because these are issues that were actually, they were actually highlighted very well by the Supreme Court. And it was very clear to all Kenyans and anyone who watched the proceedings in the Supreme Court, or even who read that particular decision, to know that we had major issues in 2017. What will be required of an electoral agency that is diligent, that is up to the task? It is that electoral agency would have introspected into what actually hit them very, very fast, and tried to bring up measures as soon as possible to avoid a repeat of that. Ideally, we have not seen that. And that is why you see, even with the regulations that the IEBC was trying to come up, it was coming up quite too late. And the parliament would actually say it is coming a bit too late in the day. And rightly so, because you cannot, Kriegler told us that you cannot start making last-minute amendments. That is what led to what we underwent in 2007. So this is an exact replica of that, an attempt to amend. In fact, they were trying to legalize an illegality, because already the Constitution is very clear under Article 86, and it says whatever voting method that IBC decides, whatever, there are those bare minimums that must be there. That process must be accurate, must be verifiable, must be secure, it must be accountable, transparent. Without those, regardless of whichever method, whether you want to take these things manually, whether you want to use 5G, whether you want to use whatever, whether you want to send to Trevor to announce to Kenyans, it must still live up to this threshold. Without that, we are looking at a possible election dispute on this, and a repeat of that decision from IBC. IBC has not even been looking or enforcing its own rules. Ideally, what Thumbi is saying is true, that the rules are very clear. A CS, someone or cannot actually be seen to actually be engaging in politics. That is wrong. Someone cannot be seen to be using state resources in campaigning. That is wrong. But these are things that the IBC has not dealt with. So as we are gearing to this, and even as we are looking at these tough questions, the ball is squarely on IBC and its leadership. There is failure. They can cost Kenyans a possible repeat elections through the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court has been very clear. If you do not meet these bare minimums under the IBC requirements under Article 88, the Supreme Court will actually take us back to another election, costing us another quite hefty amount.
Yeah. So if this circumstances prevail, this is a possible opening for another election petition.
Of course,
regardless of the results.
Because if you look at even the issues that IEBC was trying to cure, which they now will not be able to cure, they are the same issues which turned the Supreme Court petition in 2017.
Yeah.
The issue of the 11,000 polling stations lacking 3G, and the fact that the law still remains in terms of the manner of transmission. It has not changed. So if we are to do our elections today, we will flout that rule. Automatically on that ground alone, you cannot then say that you actually complied. Without compliance, ideally, and you see there's a test which is called qualitative test in terms of looking at the elections. It will fail the qualitative test regardless of how many votes any of these candidates garner, even if you get 62%. The moment you fail this qualitative test, you'll still have issues with the Supreme Court.
Yeah, and then it's from a governance perspective, and they've noticed that the simulation was done in 2,900 polling centers. There was still delays, and we're looking at 47,000 polling centers during the elections. From a policy perspective, if they take the whole 7 days, which the law allows them to take before they announce the results officially, what kind of impact would that have on the psyche of the people and the credibility of the whole process? The law allows it 7 days, but if they say that the challenges we're facing will then force us to take the whole 7 days, before they've never taken it, but if now they're contemplating it, what kind of impact would that have on the integrity of the entire poll, especially in the eyes of the people?
So this is extremely important because to medicate the issue of trust and verifiability, the law prescribed a technical mandatory threshold to IEBC. And it said because there has been issues in believing the electoral results before and there has been a contest, you will only transmit these election results via way of, sort of a mobile infrastructure, whether 3G or by VSAT. It's not, there's no, as long as it's transmitted via a digital platform, and that digital platform then is not open source. It's not subject to back-end or dark web manipulation. Thereabout. So then that process really, it doesn't mean that anybody manipulated the electoral results, but by law, to medicate the issues of trust, if this is not met, then the will of the people is violated. But the court then will judge IEBC for failure to meet a constitutional threshold in terms of the way they deliver the results.
Yeah.
But then we have known this from 2017, Trevor. The ICTCS is busy politicking everywhere, yet assisting an independent commission to meet a specific key threshold that can plunge the nation into a fragile state that we don't require. And what will prevent us from meeting, including, satellite kind of digital platforms that can help Chebukati deliver that.
Now they're thinking of buying 1,000 modems.
So, but you're buying modems on what platform? Unless you buy modems, there's no masts from any of these telcos. So it means that technically you may have to use VSAT. And then when you use VSAT, even the cost of relaying is amplified, but also the technical wherewithal of your electoral officers, they may not know how to use, VSAT technology thereabout. So it's too close home to start playing honky-ponky on key deliverables. And IEBC must style up. The other thing that IEBC must do is they must communicate to Kenyans openly, in a fast, in a process that Kenyans build that trust in that independent commission. Because the reason why we have it as independent is, again, a trust issue. It must be not subject to judiciary or the legislature or the executive at the end of the day. We trust that Chebukati, by his own virtue, that he will be able to sit within the integrity of Chapter 6 and electoral laws thereabout. The other question that he must address is failure to enforce on issues of electoral offenses. The only thing that we have seen him do is, within the presidential candidates and thereabout, he has reduced the number to 4 and thereabout, and their critical issues. But electoral offenses, there are so many. That enforcement is something that we haven't seen yet, and we're yet to see.
Okay.
So Chebukati, in the next, I believe, 59 days, must exercise himself to the fidelity of the law.
Okay.
And in the next 30 days, he must demonstrate to Kenyans that without a shadow of doubt, there is nobody who is building his own critical mass for presidential litigation.
Yeah.
Because you can imagine the entire court sat, and because there wasn't fulfillment of a technical issue, we had to go to a repeat election.
Yeah.
You understand? It was not, the question was not anybody stole, no. That never came out. The question was that it was IEBC that was on the spot for failure to fulfill a technical requirement that was medicating trust.
Yeah.
Do we want to go back there in 2022 when we have a fragile election at the end of the day, when the nation is fragile, the masses are hungry and whatever it is? No, we don't want to.
Okay.
So IEBC is setting us up for presidential litigation based on something they can treat today and once for all. And I think in the next 15 days, they must exercise their duty to tell Kenyans that this issue, because Chebukati sat before JLAC, and his confession was one of the most frightening things ever. Because in 2017, we dealt with about 11,000 polling stations that are out of network coverage. This time, Chebukati's assertion was that I have no clue how many of the polling stations are out of network coverage. At least his legal officer stuck to the 11,000. But Chebukati himself says, I don't have any knowledge of how many of these polling stations are out of network coverage.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a big issue. The big issue here is the laziness by IEBC to meet this threshold, and the laziness and the divisiveness of the regulator of this network coverage, being the ICT ministry, in terms of failure to prosecute a constitutional mandate of what Kenyans give them and fulfill this network coverage. Why? It is not just for calling my girlfriend or anybody else. This is supposed to ensure that I, a Kenyan who has employed you, is judiciously serviced by IEBC.
All right. And Duncan, when you hear just on Wednesday, IEBC chairperson Wafula Chebukati said that there are issues with the voter register. In fact, it was a preliminary report that was given to them by KPMG, amounting to about 1.1 million people having details that are either people who are already deceased, either as duplicate IDs, either are using IDs that don't belong to them, others are using documents that are not legal. Those issues coming 60 days to the elections, does that impair the IEBC's perception of pulling off a credible poll, or does it even amplify it further? Because some people are saying that, 60 days to the election, if you told us this is a problem, it means you're willing to fix it.
Very true. And as I answer that, kindly allow me to just dig in a bit on the issue of the time frame in terms of announcement. And it is important to tell Kenyans that as much as IEBC may have 7 days, as you have rightly quoted, the law does not presume that they have to take the entire 7 days. In fact, you cannot just sit back, because announcement of elections come with anxiety. Anxiety comes with tension. Tension can actually breed, violence can actually breed other things. So the law is very clear under Article 86B that everything must be done in terms of casting your vote, in terms of counting the vote, in terms of tabulation of the vote, and in terms of announcement of these results by the presiding officer, whether it is the presidential returning officer, whether it is the constituency returning officer, must be prompt. The word used there, must be prompt. So even if you have that 7 days, the Constitution still presumes and knows that you must do it as soon as possible. So you cannot just take, your leisure time and say that I still have the 7 days. You'd still be going against a constitutional provision, which is supposed to safeguard on what my co-panelist Tumbi has indicated. But now to what you have said, which is now an extremely, extremely serious issue. And as I still go back to the Kriegler report, because that is the Bible that we now use in terms of looking at the issues that have bedeviled us in terms of elections, and it has tried to give us the way forward. And if we only tried to live up to the spirit of this particular report, we will not be here. Ideally, that report has indicated very clearly that in terms of auditing of this voter register, it should not be a last-minute thing. It should be a continuous thing. Just like the Constitution says registration of voters should be a continuous thing. You cannot actually say, I'll register today, then you'll come back and register tomorrow. Those are things that even the Supreme Court has pronounced itself and led to the death of the BBI as we knew it. So to this particular extent, it is quite sad that very few days to the elections, we have issues with the voter register. That voter register should be impeccable. There should be no issue as to the register, because that is what will determine a winner in any contest. Whether it is MCA, whether it is a presidential contest, the voter register is key, because that's where the numbers will come from. Numbers will not come from any other place. So when you find that you have not actually lived up to the requirement of the Constitution in terms of having a clean, a hygienic voter register, where you remove those who are supposed to be out, you have those who are supposed to be in, and there is no interference, you protect the dignity of that register. Because one thing that is there in the Constitution is that IEBC must be able to demonstrate that it has protected the systems that are used in terms of elections. The voter register is key. Yeah. The moment you find that a presidential candidate is casting aspersions on the voter register, and the IEBC itself admits that there is a problem of this voter register, in fact, there may have been fast infiltration, or alternatively, its own officers may have been used in terms of interfering with numbers here and there. Yeah. That is a very serious question, because this is the referee. The referee is actually telling you that I think I have problems. How will these candidates then participate? How will these candidates trust you as a referee when you are owning up to this? Yeah. Days, very few days, and I can tell you, Trevor, if you looked at the KPMG report or the KPMG interview that they gave, it already dispels a lot. And I think that's where Thumbi and the rest should actually be looking at, because that's where the problem will be. Because these are the people who are auditing, and they're telling you the problems in this system is and this register is just too much. Yeah. They're the ones owning up. The days remaining, you cannot be in a process of trying to internalize or look into the voter register, trying to clean it up, because in the process of cleaning it up, you may still end up again having the same issues. So we are at a point where, Trevor, my fear is we are not ready for elections, looking at it, regardless of, I don't know which miracle, whether it's Jesus, whether it is Prophet Muhammad, will come. We are not ready. We will not be ready. And we must now live up to the point whereby people must start taking responsibility. If someone slept on the job for 5 years, Kenyans cannot start paying by footing the cost of a repeat election. Yeah. When someone slept, and especially when the Supreme Court tried to correct these things, the same person has had 5 years, then again you come and start telling people you are not even sure of which areas or how many areas and do not have network connectivity. That is already showing that you are not up to the task. You should have actually given way. Unfortunately, the Kriegler report also tells us we cannot interfere with these positions 2.5 years to an election. Yeah. So we are in a catch-22 situation, but unfortunately, these are things that will spring out in a Supreme Court petition, presidential petition. Okay,
I'll take a quick break. When you come back, Dennis, I'd like to hear your thoughts that the fact that they revealed it, is that a good thing? They said that, okay, fine, we've had the register, there's a problem. Yes. We are fixing it. More than 1 million votes. And there are also some people are saying that I've checked on the number and realized that I've been moved to Ajir and I've never been there. So let's come back with that in just a bit. And also I know there's a bit of your feedback. We'll come back with that in shortly. At Trevor Mbiji at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Daybreak. There's still a lot to talk about. There's still the IEBC and EACC integrity battle. There's the 12th Parliament has just ended. They've adjourned Sinadiye. And then also the 2022 campaigns coming through. We'll talk about the InfoTrack poll as well. See you shortly.